Rema Vasan is a seasoned global marketer with over 25 years of experience in digital marketing, advertising, and communications. She is best known for her time as head of North America business marketing at TikTok, where she led a team of marketers focused on helping brands harness the power of one of the world's fastest-moving cultural platforms. Before TikTok, Rema served as global president of Marina Maher Communications and as EVP and global lead at MSL, where she worked with some of the world's biggest brands: Procter & Gamble, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, and Activision Blizzard King, among others. She has worked across Asia, Europe, and North America, developing a deep fluency in diverse markets and cultures. At TikTok, she didn't just market at the platform, she helped building it. In 2023, she created TikTok's global gaming marketing team from scratch, and under her leadership, the platform became a dominant force for game publishers. She's a board member for IAB Gaming and Immersive Media, the NAA CMO Growth Council, and a member of CHIEF, the private network for senior women leaders, and a recognized award winner for her vision and impact. Please give a warm welcome to Rema Vasan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're rejuvenated after the caffeine, because I realize it's 3:30 after a long day. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to Ravi and Jenny for this incredible forum and thought-provoking conversations with some really amazing people. So thank you for that. And thank you as well to Ivan, who introduced me and said my name correctly, because it's pronounced nothing like it's spelled. Rema, not Rema, not Rema. And I'm here to talk to you about signals, which I realize there's been a lot of conversation about today, right? But this is going to focus on how to take signals, which is what your communities are revealing about your brand, your product, your business, and turning it into commercial advantage. Because there's no shortage of signal. What there is a shortage of how to operationalize it. We live in a world where content is infinite. Signal is everywhere, including in this room. And systems, though, that act upon that signal are scarce. What I've seen, that brands that are winning today aren't simply better at marketing. What they are really good at is taking what their communities are revealing about them and turning it into decisions and actions that translate into commercial advantage. Before we go any further, I just wanted to clarify what I mean when I say signal, and we'll get into this definition a bit more. But I think about signal as what your communities reveal when they're not being asked. It's what shows up in their behavior, how they search, how they comment, how they complain, how they work around. That's signal. And today we'll talk about how to build a system to harness those signals. Let's talk about Sora. I'm pretty sure everyone here has seen the headlines. OpenAI announced a few weeks ago that they were going to shut down Sora. It had incredible scale. It had capital, $1 billion Disney deal. It had distribution. And at its peak, it had 1 million users. And it cost $1 million a day to run. Yet, it did not sustain. My hypothesis is that this wasn't a tech problem. It was really good technology. It was a signal problem. Why? Because I believe what it appeared to have lacked is a system for really understanding why people were coming to Sora, what were they creating, why were they creating it, and what would keep them engaged and coming back. So again, if that hypothesis is true, this isn't a tech story, it's a signal story. And if signal matters this much, the core question is, why don't more organizations have a system for acting on it? I've spent 25 years, thank you for the very kind introduction, at the intersection of agencies like Omnicom, Publicis, Fortune 50 enterprises like Pfizer, and most recently, platforms like TikTok. And in every single role, I've asked the same question. What are our customers, our consumers, our communities already telling us that we haven't built a system to hear? Because in my point of view, the brands that are winning today aren't the ones with the best technology, the biggest innovations, or the biggest budget. It's those that are the ones that have leaned into reading signal and also, importantly, acting on it faster. Back to the definition. Signal is what people reveal when they're not being asked. It is not a survey. It is not a focus group. It's what people do. It's how they behave. It's how they search. It's the calls that they make, the 1-800 calls that they make to your customer service number. It's how they repeat. It's how they hack. It's how they work around. All of those are signals. I realize I'm in a room of a lot of insights leaders. Research is very important, but research answers questions you already have. Signals reveal questions that you haven't thought to ask yet, and that's a whole different category of intelligence. There are many, many sources of signal. There's, of course, social behavior, comments, saves, shares. There's search. There's ratings and reviews. There's customer experience, emails, calls. There's conversation in your community. And increasingly, it's not just human. It's also how machines are interpreting your brand. If an LLM is asked for a recommendation, and if your brand shows up, or if it doesn't, that's signal. And AEO, or answer engine optimization, is about showing up in AI-generated answers, not just search results. So that's an important source of signal as well. I'm going to make an assertion here, which is that signal changes what wins and who wins. Earlier today, Stan, who I think is still here, and Maharaj made a point that really stayed with me. People don't talk to brands, they talk about brands. And the challenge isn't access to signal, it's what you do with it. And that changes what wins. I realize I made a big assertion here, so I'm going to prove it with some cases in point. You'll see that a lot of the cases that I talk about are going to be grounded in the social and creator space. That's not to say that's the only place where signal lives. Of course, it's bigger than that. But that's also my background, which is why you'll see some examples in that space. So, Skittles. A couple of years ago, consumers started freeze-drying candy, including Skittles. And then they were selling them at a markup. It was a really high-margin, community-led trend that the brand at the time didn't have anything to do with. Skittles spotted it, and they launched what you see here, which is Skittles Popped. They launched it first on TikTok Shop, and then they scaled it nationwide across retail. They didn't invent the product, the community did. And the brand then followed with this launch. What did this signal actually look like? Hashtag freeze-dried candy reached billions of views, billions with a B, on TikTok. But this wasn't just content. People were buying, they were selling, and building small businesses around freeze-dried candy. Independent sellers were setting up shops on Etsy, Amazon, TikTok Shop. So an entire parallel market had formed around this product that Skittles then leaned into the signals for and launched this product. That is Signal. I was at a panel with the CMO of Rothy's, great shoe brand, by the way, Jamie Gersh, and she said something that stopped me in my tracks. One of their products, the Mary Jane, moved from number 8 to number 1 in sales. There was no product innovation. There was no new campaign. What changed was how the brand showed up in the conversations that were already happening. And what were those signals? The first is that there was a very large, active consumer community sharing feedback, preferences, product usage, fandom around the Mary Jane. The brand didn't create it. It was created by the communities. And creators started talking about real-world experience of the comfort of the shoes, walking 15,000 steps in Florence. And the third, there was a cultural shift towards hashtag ballet core, which the Mary Jane was squarely at the center of. So what they did at Rothy's was really lean into it and amplified that signal, and demand accelerated, and the product sold out multiple times. So the signal was already there, and the system made it move. Stan also said something I really agree with. I love this quote, by the way. Insight without action is just hallucination. And to that point, if signal doesn't change what moves, it's just noise. So what's the challenge? Again, it isn't paucity of signal. Most organizations don't lack it. There's dashboards, there's data, there's insights. Signal doesn't fail because it's missing. It fails because it can't move. It gets stuck in reports, in these dashboards, in meetings, and doesn't always make it to what ships. So here's a system that could close that gap with 3 components: capture, translate, activate. And if it doesn't change something real, it's not a system. By the way, when I say something real, it doesn't necessarily have to be a product innovation. It could be in any way that you go to market. It could be how you activate your media plans. It could be your pricing. It could be any elements of that. But it has to, if you're really leaning into a signal, then it has to change something real. So capture. This is how you assess the different sources of signal and create hypotheses. And if this hypothesis takes more than a week to reach a decision maker, you don't really have a system, you have a report. Because we live in a world where the signals are moving fast, the world is moving fast. Translating. This is about taking that raw signal into something that the business can actually act upon. And this is where AI can play. Notice this is the first time I'm using the words AI. This is where AI can play a really important role. It's not as the insight, but as the accelerant. It can compress the time to go from signal to response. But without that human signal and the human judgment of interpreting it, it doesn't produce meaning. So I'll give you a simple example. When DoorDash was founded, the founders of DoorDash at the very, very beginning, they actually delivered all orders by hand. They went door to door to the restaurants, they picked up the food, and they delivered to the people who had made the orders. Why? Because they were trying to assess why people were ordering, what were they ordering, what combination of foods they were ordering, what occasions they were ordering it for, and that learning was the signal that fueled the system. Finally, activate. How do you turn that signal into something real in market? Another example, McDonald's snack wrap. I just realized I have a lot of food examples. Customers had been asking for it across social, across search. The signal was really clear. It was persistent and it was behavioral. What did that signal look like? There were tens of thousands of people petitioning signatures calling for the return of the snack wrap. There was viral content showing people going out of their way to get it. And there were customers still asking for it at drive-thrus. And there were fan messages like, I've waited years. This isn't just social chatter. This is a business case that's being delivered by your communities. And when the snack rack came back, it wasn't just a launch, it was a cultural moment. There was a campaign made from real fan posts. There was a microsite capturing years of demand. And there was creative that was rooted in what people had been saying, asking for the snack wrap to come back. So the signal actually became the creative brief for the return of the snack wrap. So where's the gap? Signal moves in real time. Organizations frequently move in cycles, quarters, fiscals, so on. And the gap is where your competitive advantage is either won or lost. Speed isn't just about efficiency when it comes to signal. It's a competitive advantage. Why? Because the world, of course, is moving extremely fast. Platforms shift, behaviors changed. And here's a proposed timeline in the best systems. Go from signal to having a hypothesis in about 3 days. And go from that hypothesis to a test in days or weeks, not months or years. Again, I realize timelines vary from product to product, business to business, but the point here is to drive action because the longer the gap, the smaller your advantage. And notice also that I said from hypotheses to test, because again, it's hard to validate these things if you scale too quickly, and a pilot or a test can really help you better understand the validity of that signal. I like dogs. This is from my For You page. So the feed, and this, I worked at TikTok. A lot of people think about the feed as a content system, a distribution system. Sure, but it's actually a signal system as well. And when I was building TikTok's global gaming vertical organization, what I observed was that the brands that were winning were the ones who weren't just trying to beat the algorithm, they really understood what the algorithm was revealing about gamer behavior and then acting on it faster. So which characters were the gamers cosplaying? Which trailers were they most looking forward to? Which elements of the game were they most talking about? Because there's such fandom around gaming. And all that was coming through in the comments and the behavior and the engagement on the platform. Let's talk about what I believe is the most misread signal in marketing today. The most valuable and the most misread, I believe, are creators. Most brands treat creators as a content engine, as a channel, but that's changing really rapidly because creators are so much more than that. They're actually signal systems. Another person whom I believe most everyone will know, Mr. Beast. He has nearly 500 million subscribers across platforms. He is the biggest audience of any creator on YouTube. But the model is what matters. His content is not the output. It's the input. And you can see here his quote. Beast Industries was just named one of the most influential companies by Time magazine. He talks about how he reinvests almost all the money into more content because every piece is a testing engine for what people respond to. And content becomes the signal engine, and then the product, like Feastables and others, are the business. Alex Earle, who's another prolific creator, she built her audience by being super open about her skin struggles, specifically acne. And she didn't rush into launching a product. She built trust first. And when she launched Real Actives a few months ago, it sold out within hours. What's more interesting is how it was built. Her team was in the comments section across all TikToks that were talking about Real Actives, paying attention to what people were saying and how they were responding. So she used that information, her team, to really feed into the launch of the product, and that's signal. So if I had to summarize the creator piece, creators sense, but a question came up when I was prepping for this, which is if creators are now in the business of selling products, what does that mean for enterprises? Well, creators are incredible in sensing, but enterprises are incredible at scaling. These are two very different capabilities because creators are very close to behaviors, they're close to their communities, they see the signals early. And enterprises have reach, they have capabilities to build, and they can turn the signal into product and into distribution. So when creators bring the signal and when enterprises bring the system to act upon it, you close the gap between what people want and what the business delivers. And that's the model which Pepsi leaned into. Pepsi partnered with creators, specifically Madison Beer, iShowSpeed, and Dude Perfect, not just as promoters, but as co-creators in shaping the product. So each of these creators had input into, these are all chips, into the flavor, into this line called Flavor Swap, and they were part of how these products came to life. And these products were launched on TikTok Shop first, and then they were scaled to retail. So as you can see here, the model was taking the signal from the creators in partnership with the creators, developing the products, launching it on TikTok Shop, and then scaling it nationally. AI can generate infinite content. And AI is probably the worst that it can be today. It's only going to get better. But human signal remains the constraint. And it's the load-bearing walls in this world of the AI revolution. And that is both the constraint, but also the advantage. So what this means is that you're not competing on content. You're competing on how fast you can learn and act upon it. So here's what you can do, and I'm going to try and be a little specific so it's not super high level. Move signal out of its silo. Identify where in your organization signal is generated, what reports is it a part of, how long does it take to reach the decision maker, how do you accelerate that? The second thing is look at your creator relationships, and I'm not saying change all of them, but redesign one of them where you're not just asking them to develop content and distribute content, but actually build with them. Learn from them, learn from their communities, see what signals you can get from their communities, and co-create with them. And act on one signal. turn it into one decision or one hypothesis, and test it. Because I believe that the advantage will go to companies that can turn signals into decisions faster than everyone else. The future, in closing, is not going to belong to the companies that produce the most content. It will belong to the ones that are listening closely enough to build what people were already asking for. And that's the architecture, signal to system. Happy to connect. Thank you. And also happy to take any questions. I timed it so there would be at least 5 minutes. Yes.
Bridget Gilbert from McCormick.
Hi, Bridget.
How do you know when a signal is truly a signal and not a fad?
Great question. Thank you. I would say I look for 3 things. The first is it actually some kind of behavioral change on part of the consumers? Are they using your product in a way different than it was intended? Are they hacking it in some way? Are they complaining about something? So I look for that persistence. And then I look for also how it is beyond one source. So if a signal comes from a platform like TikTok, is it exclusive to that platform, or is it actually coming from multiple sources? And then I think about whether it is truly like not just, a moment in time, but it's persistent. And again, the period of time will vary, but is it persistent beyond just a week? Like, is there enough volume of signal over a period of time? So those are the 3 things that I would look for to understand if it's truly a signal versus just a passing fad. Okay, well, thank you so much.